Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, and for the first time in years, there is nothing but silence. No high-pitched whine, no low ocean roar following you from room to room, no persistent hiss that gets louder the moment you try to fall asleep. Just quiet. Pure, ordinary quiet. The kind most people take completely for granted. I want you to hold that image for a second, because every single thing I'm about to share with you is built around making exactly that possible. My name is Dr. David Anderson. I've spent over 20 years in cardiology and preventive medicine, and I've watched thousands of patients do everything right. The medications, the ear specialists, the noise machines, and still lie awake at night with that relentless sound running on a loop in the background of their lives. Here's what I had to learn, and what most conventional approaches still completely miss. Tinnitus, that phantom ringing, buzzing, humming, or hissing in your ears, is not, in the vast majority of cases, a disease of your ears. It is a distress signal. Your auditory nervous system is running on nutritional empty, and it is screaming for help in the only language it knows. Today I'm walking you through 5 specific nutritional targets, the biology behind each one, and exactly what to do starting this week, with foods available at any ordinary grocery store. But there is one critical trap that will make everything in this video completely useless if you fall into it. I'll reveal it in the second half. Don't skip ahead. You'll need the context first, or you'll misapply what you hear. Let's begin with what's actually happening inside your ear. Deep inside your cochlea, that spiral, snail-shaped structure in your inner ear, you have specialized sensory cells called hair cells, tens of thousands of them. These cells are your sound detectors. They convert mechanical vibration into electrical signal, and that signal travels up the auditory nerve to your brain. The auditory nerve, like every nerve in your body, is wrapped in a protective coating called myelin. Think of myelin as the insulation around an electrical wire. When that insulation is intact, signals travel cleanly, fast, and accurately. When the insulation thins or frays, you get interference, crossed signals, phantom electrical noise that your brain has no choice but to interpret as sound. Not a sound from the outside world. A sound manufactured entirely by a misfiring system that no longer has the raw materials to function correctly. That is tinnitus. And one of the most well-documented drivers of myelin degradation is a deficiency affecting roughly 40% of adults over the age of 60. Vitamin B12. Here's the frustrating part. Your doctor orders a blood panel, looks at your B12 result, and says, "You're fine." And technically, by standard laboratory reference ranges, which typically bottom out around 200 picograms per milliliter, you might appear normal. But here's what the research actually shows. For auditory nerve health specifically, your B12 should be considerably higher, closer to 700 or 800 picograms per milliliter. Some neurologists working intensively with tinnitus patients push even higher than that. The standard reference range was designed to prevent the most severe consequences of outright deficiency: anemia, severe peripheral neuropathy. It was never optimized for neural repair. Those are 2 completely different clinical targets, and the gap between them is enormous. It's the difference between a frayed wire that technically conducts electricity and a properly insulated wire that conducts cleanly and quietly, without generating interference. I had a patient, 63 years old, retired engineer, still mentally sharp as a tack, who came to me describing tinnitus that had been building progressively for 4 years. His B12 on his last annual panel was 340. His previous doctor had flagged it normal and moved on. We retested with a more comprehensive workup, including homocysteine and methylmalonic acid, 2 markers that reveal B12 status at the cellular level far more accurately than serum B12 alone. Both were elevated. His cells were starving even though his basic blood number looked acceptable on paper. We worked alongside his physician to address the underlying issue. By week 8, he described the ringing as noticeably quieter. By week 14, he said it was only present occasionally, usually when he was exhausted or under unusual stress. 4 years of continuous noise. 4 years of being told his blood work was fine. Right now, today, pull out your most recent blood work and locate your B12 number. If you don't have recent blood work, call your doctor this week. Ask specifically for B12, and ideally methylmalonic acid alongside it. 2 numbers, 1 phone call. If your B12 is below 600, you have your first clear nutritional target. Best dietary sources: wild salmon, beef liver, eggs, and full-fat dairy. If dietary B12 is a challenge, whether because of dietary restrictions, medication interference from drugs like metformin, or the absorption issues that become increasingly common after 60 as stomach acid production naturally declines, A methylcobalamin supplement is worth a direct conversation with your physician. Methylcobalamin is the active, neurologically available form, not cyanocobalamin. That distinction matters more than most supplement labels will ever tell you. Picture a healthy nerve fiber, smooth, fully insulated, conducting clean signals from your ear to your brain without interference or static. That is what you are working toward. Before we move on, how many years have you been told the ringing is simply aging? 1 year? 5? More than 10? Write a number in the comments below. I've started tracking the answers, and the pattern is more significant than most people realize. Nutrient number 2, zinc. This one surprises almost everyone. Your inner ear contains some of the highest concentrations of zinc in the entire human body. Why? Because those hair cells, your sound detectors, are extraordinarily vulnerable to oxidative stress. Think of oxidative stress as biological rust, free radical damage. It corrodes. It degrades. It destroys slowly and silently over months and years. Zinc is your primary antioxidant defense inside the cochlea. It works directly within the cells that translate vibration into electrical signal. When zinc levels are adequate, those cells are resilient and self-repairing. When zinc is low, the same cells become fragile, prone to damage from noise exposure, low-grade inflammation, and the normal metabolic stress of daily life. Multiple independent studies comparing tinnitus patients to individuals with normal hearing have found significantly lower serum zinc levels in the tinnitus group. The correlation is consistent enough that audiology researchers now formally recommend zinc assessment as part of any thorough tinnitus evaluation. And yet, most tinnitus patients I speak with have never had their zinc tested. Not once. Not ever. Here is the part almost everyone misses completely. Getting zinc into your body is only half the equation. You also have to absorb it. Phytates, compounds found in commercial breakfast cereals, heavily processed grain products, and most commercial bread, bind to zinc in your digestive tract and carry it out of your body completely unused. You ate the zinc. You never actually received it. It passed through as though it was never there. Excess caffeine compounds this further. 3 or 4 cups of coffee per day can meaningfully impair zinc absorption at the intestinal level. It's not just the caffeine itself. It's the combination of timing and the way caffeine affects mineral transport across the gut wall. Here is the practical protocol for zinc. Best sources. Oysters. By a wide margin, the most concentrated food source available. Pumpkin seeds, grass-fed beef, and dark turkey meat. A small handful of pumpkin seeds daily, roughly a 1/4 cup, delivers around 3 milligrams. Pair it with a protein source. Do not pair it with coffee or a heavy grain-based meal. Eat your pumpkin seeds mid-morning or with lunch, away from your first 2 cups of coffee. If you are having 3 cups of coffee and a bowl of commercial cereal every morning and wondering why your auditory system isn't recovering, that combination may be actively working against you. Not just failing to help, actively blocking what your inner ear needs most. This change costs almost nothing and takes 30 seconds of planning. A small handful of pumpkin seeds, smarter pairing, and a modest adjustment to your morning caffeine timing. That is a real, meaningful shift you can make tomorrow morning. Moving to number 3, and this one, in my clinical opinion, is the most underappreciated mechanism in the entire tinnitus conversation: magnesium. Stay with this one closely because the mechanism here changes everything. Your brain uses a chemical called glutamate as its primary excitatory neurotransmitter. Glutamate is the gas pedal for your neurons. In normal, balanced amounts, absolutely essential for thought, memory, and sensory processing. But under chronic stress, and most adults over 60 are carrying some degree of ongoing low-grade physiological stress, whether they recognize it or not, glutamate can spike to levels that become genuinely toxic to neurons. Neuroscientists call this excitotoxicity. Too much gas, no brake. The neurons keep firing, keep accelerating, until the system begins to damage itself. Magnesium is the brake pedal. It physically blocks a specific receptor called the NMDA receptor, the main gateway through which glutamate generates its most powerful excitatory effects. When magnesium is adequate, your brain can regulate the signal. When magnesium falls below optimal, and surveys consistently show somewhere between 50 and 60% of American adults are below optimal magnesium levels, the brake is simply gone. For tinnitus specifically, excitotoxicity in the auditory cortex may be actively amplifying the phantom sound your brain perceives. Your neural processing centers are overexcited, chronically overactive, generating noise that corresponds to nothing in the external world. This is why tinnitus so reliably worsens under stress. It is not psychological, it is biochemical. Cortisol depletes magnesium. Depleted magnesium removes the brake on glutamate. Glutamate excitotoxicity drives the auditory cortex into overdrive. The ringing intensifies. You feel more anxious. Cortisol rises further. The cycle feeds itself day after day. Practical action. Dark leafy greens, particularly spinach, are exceptional magnesium sources. 1 cup of cooked spinach provides roughly 150 milligrams. Almonds, black beans, dark chocolate at 85% cacao or higher, and avocado are reliable daily sources as well. Starting this week, add 1 to 2 cups of dark leafy greens to your daily meals. And make one structural change. Replace 1 daily serving of refined carbohydrates, whether that's white bread, white rice, or pasta, with black beans or lentils. You get magnesium, fiber, and more stable blood sugar in a single substitution. Blood sugar stability matters more than most people realize because glucose spikes drive inflammatory cycles that affect every system in the body, including the microscopic circulation your inner ear depends on completely. Let's take a moment here. You've just learned about 3 deeply interconnected systems: myelin insulation through B12, oxidative protection through zinc, and neural braking through magnesium. Each one is a separate piece of the same puzzle. And I want you to notice something. None of this is exotic or obscure. These are basic nutritional building blocks your body uses every single day to maintain and repair nervous tissue. Most of us were simply never taught that the sound in our heads might be a nutritional message, that the body is communicating, and we've been living with static instead of listening to what it's actually trying to say. Number 4, vitamin D3. Most people associate D3 with bones and calcium. All valid. But here's what rarely gets discussed. D3 functions more like a hormone than a traditional vitamin. It directly regulates the expression of genes involved in protecting your auditory pathway. Vitamin D3 receptors have been identified in the cells of the inner ear itself. Your cochlear cells are literally waiting for adequate D3 to receive protective operating instructions. When D3 is sufficient, those gene programs include clearing cellular debris, dampening inflammatory signaling, and reinforcing the mitochondria inside hair cells so they generate energy efficiently and withstand daily stress. When D3 is low, those protective programs are effectively switched off. If you're living above the 40th parallel, anywhere north of roughly Denver or Philadelphia, which includes most of Canada, the United Kingdom, Northern Europe, and large parts of Northern Asia, from October through April, you are receiving virtually no meaningful ultraviolet B radiation. Your skin cannot synthesize D3. You are functionally deficient for 5 to 6 months of the year, unless you're eating specific foods or supplementing consistently. The best dietary source, by a considerable margin, is wild-caught salmon. A 4-ounce serving can provide between 600 and 1,000 international units of D3 in a single meal. Egg yolks, sardines, and mackerel contribute meaningful amounts. But wild salmon is your primary whole food vehicle. Your target blood level is between 50 and 70 nanograms per milliliter. Most adults over 60 need between 1,500 and 2,000 international units daily to reach and maintain that range through winter months, depending on baseline levels, body composition, and sun exposure habits. Test, don't guess. Ask your doctor specifically for a 25-hydroxy vitamin D blood test. It's standard, widely available, and inexpensive. It will tell you exactly where you stand. Many adults over 60 are sitting at 20 to 30 nanograms per milliliter and have no idea, because nobody has ever presented D3 as an auditory health nutrient. Now you have a different frame. Nutrient number 5, omega-3 fatty acids. Let me explain something about tinnitus and blood flow that most people have never heard framed this way. Deep inside your inner ear is a blood vessel called the labyrinthine artery. It is one of the most delicate arteries in the human body, narrow, fragile, and solely responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients to every hair cell in your cochlea. And here is the detail that changes how you think about this entire problem. It has no backup, no collateral circulation, no alternative route if flow is compromised. If this single vessel is restricted, your hair cells begin to starve. Not suddenly, not dramatically, gradually, chronically, over months and years of subtle inadequacy. They receive less oxygen, less glucose, less of everything required to fire accurately and recover between uses. Cells under chronic nutritional stress begin to malfunction. They fire erratically. They send false signals up the auditory nerve. Your brain receives those signals and has no option but to interpret them as sound. Omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA, the form found in highest concentration in brain and nervous tissue, make your cell membranes more fluid and responsive. They reduce the tendency of platelets to clump together, making blood less viscous and easier to move through the finest vessels. They reduce the low-grade vascular inflammation that progressively tightens and stiffens the tiny arteries your inner ear depends on. If B12 is the insulation on the wire and magnesium is the voltage regulator, then omega-3 is the quality of the fuel line itself. Without adequate circulation, none of the other nutrients we've discussed can even reach their target. Wild salmon delivers both D3 and omega-3 in a single serving. That is not a coincidence of convenience. It is exactly the kind of whole food synergy that matters more than any isolated supplement. The body evolved alongside real food. It recognizes and uses these nutrients most effectively when they arrive together in the natural ratios found in a whole meal. If fish isn't practical 2 or 3 times per week, a high-quality fish oil supplement providing at least 1 gram of combined EPA and DHA daily is a well-studied alternative. Look for products independently third-party tested for oxidation and heavy metal contamination. The quality of fish oil supplements varies enormously, and a rancid oil creates more oxidative burden than it relieves. Now, stop. Pay close attention to what comes next, because this is the moment I mentioned at the very beginning of this video. Everything I just walked you through, B12, zinc, magnesium, D3, omega-3, is valid. All of it carries solid research support. And for many people, committing to this nutritional approach produces real, measurable improvement over 4 to 8 weeks. But for somewhere between 40 and 50% of you watching, it will not be sufficient on its own. You need to know why. There is a class of medications called ototoxic drugs. Ototoxic means directly toxic to the structures of the ear, and some of the most widely used over-the-counter and prescription medications in the world fall into this category. Regular aspirin, particularly at higher doses used for pain, or even at the lower preventive doses many adults take daily for cardiovascular protection, has well-documented ototoxic effects. It can chemically damage the hair cells of your cochlea directly, independent of anything happening with your nutrition or circulation. Certain diuretics, some antibiotics, and specific medications also carry ototoxic risk. This is documented in standard pharmacology textbooks. The challenge is that ototoxicity develops gradually and is easy to attribute to other causes, including the natural aging process. Here is the painful irony I see repeatedly. Many adults over 60 are taking daily aspirin on their physician's recommendation, specifically to protect their cardiovascular system, which is a reasonable clinical goal. And that same aspirin may be directly worsening their tinnitus in parallel. The medication protecting one system is quietly undermining another. I am not telling you to stop any medication. That is a decision to be made with your physician based on your complete medical history, not based on a video. What I am saying, if you follow today's nutritional protocol and see no meaningful improvement after 6 weeks, bring a written list of every medication you currently take, every one, over-the-counter and prescription, to your next appointment. Ask your doctor specifically about ototoxic potential. Ask directly, could any medication on this list be contributing to my tinnitus? It is a completely legitimate medical question, and any good physician will take it seriously. Now, the practical framework that ties everything together. I call it the hearing rescue dinner. Wild salmon, your D3 and omega-3, both addressed in one serving. A generous portion of sautéed spinach alongside it, your magnesium. Pumpkin seeds scattered across the top, your zinc. And 2 additions most people overlook entirely: fresh ginger and fresh garlic. Ginger contains compounds called gingerols that directly support microcirculation at the capillary level, exactly the scale where the labyrinthine artery operates. Garlic contains allicin, which reduces platelet aggregation and supports the elasticity of fine vessel walls. Both work gently, cumulatively, and without side effects in normal culinary amounts. This single meal, eaten 3 or 4 times per week, addresses nearly every nutritional target from today's conversation. You do not need 20 bottles of supplements lined up on your kitchen counter. You do not need to overhaul your entire lifestyle starting Monday morning. You need the right foods, prepared simply, eaten consistently across several weeks, and the patience to let the biology work at its own pace. Your body is not a machine that responds to a software update. It is a biological system that heals through repetition and time. Most people who commit to this approach report the first noticeable changes somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks in. Not complete silence right away, but a reduction in intensity. Fewer hours during the day when the ringing is prominent. Better sleep. More mental space. Less of that constant low-level friction that colors every quiet moment. That is real progress, and it is available to you. Before we close, have you ever had your B12 or zinc levels specifically tested in connection with your tinnitus? Write 1 in the comments if your doctor has never raised this with you. Write 2 if you've actually been tested. I read through these, and your answers genuinely shape the content I create. You're not just leaving a comment, you're contributing to what this channel becomes. If this was useful, a thumbs up helps other people dealing with the same frustration find this information. There are millions of adults living with tinnitus who have never been told any of what we covered today. I also have a video specifically on vascular health and the connection to hearing that goes considerably deeper on circulation and the labyrinthine artery. If the omega-3 section resonated most with you, that video is your logical next step. The link is in the description. One final note, please speak with your physician before changing your diet or beginning any new supplement, especially if you're managing chronic conditions or taking medications regularly. Everything here is educational. Your doctor knows your complete picture in a way no video ever can. I'll see you in the next one.